we still have some time, some 10 minutes for discussion, questions, comments. זה יכול להיות בעברית או באנגלית. Okay. The floor is open. Yes, please.
For the first speaker, do you recognize or identify a self-correcting role of the Hebrew University of Jerusalem since the formation years of Judaic studies in situations of victory, that is victory as a response upon an assault, the self-correcting role, particularly to the Department of Jewish Studies. That is, if there is some kind of a equilibrating force that is cautious of the cost of victory.
Well, it's okay. I'm not sure I completely understood what you mean by self-correcting, but the Jewish studies kept forming and reforming themselves as history went along. Like the first generation were historians and scholars trained in German universities, and what they brought with them was their German training. Then their students they received some of that German training, but they also were trained to do something different than what those early scholars were trained, because those early scholars trained them to be the new Jewish people of Israel. They trained them to be something new, something different, no longer German Jews, but full-blown Jews living in their own society, let's say, before we're moving on to the questions of state, which come only later.
Yes, please.
Thank you all for the talks, and my question would be for Yael. All of your question, which I think perhaps is not the focus of your research, but you talked about institutions, a bit, and their role in German Jewish and Israeli, and talking to our discussion. And I was wondering if you can mention very briefly and please attempt to connect between the personal sense or something that's part of it, more official request or by Israel's Foreign Office. I think interesting because current field was also involved in the negotiations between Israel and Germany in the 50s of the transfer of archives to Israel, the transfer of German researchers to Israel. And connecting to what you said yet about the negotiations in the 1960s about the transfer to Jerusalem. And I was wondering who negotiated these discussions?
If he was involved in the negotiations?
Yeah, was it also something very official? We can see the different participations, discussing it, because in the 50s it really caused very hard discussions and needed the involvement of Chancellor Adenauer. So I was wondering, how these discussions were held in the 1950s. And was it, when did the meeting start?
Okay, so it's really, yeah, it works? Okay. So it's really just a few letters they exchange, and it's in the mid-1950s. And there is this correspondence between Paul Kluge from the Institute for Contemporary History and Chaim Yechiel, and he invites him to a conference that I also mentioned in my talk on resistance against National Socialism. And he's very much, so Kluge is like really into, he goes like, we really want you to come because it would be such a nice symbol also of the cooperation and all of that. So there is this idea of, that's why I included him in the talk, because I think it really shows how the Institute for Contemporary History looked for certain for Jews to cooperate with, and then he can't join because it's like a week before he becomes ambassador in Sweden, and sorry, correct me if I'm wrong, Sweden and Norway, I think, like it's together or something. Yeah. So there is this. So it's in 1956, and then he established like he tries to reach someone in Yad Vashem, and then it's not successful for the conference. But then later on, there is a correspondence between Yad Vashem and the Institute for Contemporary History, and it's like Yachiel who basically started the conversation there. There is also in the letters some discussion of whether he could come as an Israeli representative, because it's very sensitive at the time. Yeah.
I will say it in Hebrew, okay? ככל שהחומרים מצביעים בארכיונים, המעורבות של חיים יחיל לא הייתה באותם השנים בוודאי לא סביב הכנסת הזה. הוא הגיע בעיקר מהמוזיאונים והמוסדות שהיו מעוניינים להעביר אותו לארץ, כמו שהזכרנו, גם במוזיאון קרל כץ, כי נעשו כבר איזה שהם חילופי מוצגים בין מוזיאון ישראל ששלח פריטים לתערוכות האלה בגרמניה, והם עמדו ממש בקשר ישיר. קונרד שילינג שהיה האוצר של התערוכות הללו ומעורב בהם, היה ממש בקשר ישיר עם אלישבע כהן וקרל כץ במוזיאון ישראל, מוזיאון בצלאל עדיין, אותו מוזיאון ישראל, ודוד דוידוביץ' שמאוד ביקש להעביר את זה, הוא אפילו ניסה להפעיל רבנים כדי להחזיר את זה בקונטקסט דתי לישראל, אבל זה לא צלח, כך שהמעורבות הרשמית היא הייתה בעיקר סביב השילוב של הפריטים ההיסטוריים האלה בתערוכות בגרמניה, פחות לצורך העברה שלהם לישראל, וזה התחיל באמת רק במהלך שנות ה-60 ולא מוקדם יותר.
Yes, please.
Just then, I want to ask, did the research, the early research in Germany have a real-time effect on Germany in any, like in education or in the academia, like researching the Holocaust and the National Socialism, like did it have a real-time effect?
You mean the project I talked about, or
Yes.
So the project never, it never happened. Like it, so there was no effect on anyone because this book got never published. So yeah. So there is no. I think when we talk about Holocaust education in Germany, this is much later. So I think it really needed in the student protests in the 1968, who were like the first generation of questioning their parents' role in National Socialism, and then later on initiatives like local initiatives who would be more interested in also the Jewish past of towns and cities, etc. So, but this is all much later. So
there was no research in Germany that impacted how they viewed the Holocaust until the protests.
Well, I think there was very little. I think that like all this. So what I'm interested in is like early Holocaust research and researchers and their networks. And so what I'm interested in is like a period from 1945, if you want to, until the early 1960s. And this is really a period about which for a long time everybody said like nobody researched the Holocaust at all. Now we know from like more recent research that there has been research, so mostly Jewish historians took an interest in the Holocaust. Also in Germany, Josef Wolf is like I think like the most important example for Germany itself. But it did not have a lasting, like it didn't have much impact on Germans. Yeah, but maybe anyone else here could add something.
I am afraid we will have to stop here.